Finally got it working. All right. So, better late than never, huh? Sorry for the extensive delay, folks. Do I have a 5x5? Can everybody hear me? Wow, what an ordeal. All right. So, there were a whole bunch of people waiting, and I think they probably gave up after an hour and a half of messing with OBS and YouTube, and it turns out it was a glitch in the live stream broadcast that I set up. For some reason it wasn't accepting that, and twice I tried to go live, and it let me go live with something completely different that nobody knew about. So anyway, this is working, and if you want to share the link around so people know that it's happening, that would be cool. And so I thought I would just start with a video that I posted on my channel a few days ago. This is an older video that many of you have already seen and probably already seen on my channel, but a lot of people haven't, and it's just kind of a good opener to just prime the pump for what we're going to talk about today. And if you haven't seen it, you'll enjoy it, but it gives some people a chance to roll in, and let me know how the audio is on the video. So, oh wait, it's on max here. Let me just see so we don't blow.
Guys, yesterday I put up a video about what looks like a massive ancient tree.
How's the video?
And evidence of branches and leaves laying next to a huge stump. In fact, one of the leaves measured taller than the Empire State Building. I want to take you to the location now, and here we go. And the area that we are looking at is north central Madagascar, right in this area here. There are more than one example of what look like to me ancient tree stumps with quite possibly large branches and large leaves in some cases laying next to some of these very huge structures. This is one that I showed you guys yesterday. Measure this thing and you can look at the side view even. On Google Earth here, we'll go side to side. There's the stump. 4,000 foot on this side over here. Go across. A little taller on this side, about 4,150 feet. It's over 8 miles wide. We look at the miles, 8.45 miles. We could set the entire city of Nashville and all of its suburbs right there quite comfortably. If you go to the left, which would be about the 10, 11 o'clock position, all over in this area, you'll find what look like leaves and branches all over the ground. Here's an example of one here. There's many, many, many examples. This one here we're going to measure real quick, and I'll show you just to kind of put things in perspective how long that thing is compared to something that's very tall. So we'll measure from top to bottom. And we'll go in feet, 1,596 feet. That one branch is taller than the Empire State Building we showed in a video earlier, right there. I think it's the same exact branch that's on the ground, taller than the Empire State Building. And there's others. There's many others. So if you look around, you'll also find many more examples of these leaves, like right here, big, huge branches. To me, they look like something in the cedar family. Obviously, this is in a league all of its own. Nothing like what we know today. I mean, we think 200 feet's tall. Can you imagine? If this thing's got, which it does, it looks like it's got this is a pretty good example here, and that's a cedar. 8 mile wide base. Look there. Good example. And that looks like, to me, a cedar. But the base of that one that I showed you is 8 miles wide. It's near a river. It would have taken a lot of water to supply a living organism that big with an 8 mile wide base. And again, the height, I couldn't even begin to speculate. It's hard to wrap your mind around something that could be that tall. And you know it had to be many miles tall. There's another example up here. Looks like yet another ancient tree stump. Got a river here. You got what look like little arteries running through it. I'm sure at one time those supplied water to a very tall structure, which is right here in north central Madagascar. If you go over here to the west coast of Madagascar, you'll find yet another, what looks like to me, a very good example of a tree, or what used to be an old tree. This is the stump. You've got the primaries, which are the rivers. That's its primary source of water, probably right next to the roots, and the root systems go probably many miles deep. We'll measure this one for perspective purposes, just from edge to edge. 8.5 miles long. It's about the same size as the one next door. Let's measure its side height. Go from here to here. There you go. And there's your structure. It goes up about 1,175 feet. And it's 8.5 miles across. It's got 2 rivers and a lot of secondaries that fed it water at one time. You'll also find in this area, if you look close, they're a little harder to see. There's other examples over here, what to me looks like once was an old tree, old tree, old tree. I just showed you one over on the left. If you look closely in this area here to the left of this big structure, you'll find what look like occasionally some sort of a large seed that is laying next to a branch or a leaf, like in this case here. There are examples if you look closely, and those things are like 27 feet wide in some examples. Here's another picture of the landscape that you'll find next to that stump that I shared with you guys yesterday, and to me that's undeniable. Those are some sort of leaves from a big tree from long, long ago. And you know, Earth is a fascinating place, and this is just one of the many fascinating aspects of our planet. So enjoy, guys. That's on Google Earth, once again, in central Madagascar. There are more than one example in this area. Have fun looking around. Thanks for watching. Have a super day. Be safe out there.
Pretty cool video.
Guys, yesterday
Oops. Start that one up again. Yeah, so I came across that video, I don't know, it's been a few years at least, and that came after this video made the rounds, No Forests on Flat Earth. Maybe a lot of you have seen this as well. And this one was the first that I saw that introduced the idea of, hold on, just adjusting the microphone here. A little closer, someone said it wasn't so loud. How's the audio now? Yeah, so this video was pretty remarkable because it was the first time that I had seen all of these different examples of how tree stumps match a lot of these plateaus around the world. And there's a lot of different opinions about these, and we're going to talk about a bunch of them today, about whether or not they're tree stumps. Some think they're tendons, others think that they're mushrooms, some think that they're the remains of large-scale mining waste, and we're going to talk about all of that today. But this is definitely a video to take a look at, No Forests on Flat Earth, and really kind of sparked the whole idea. And then after seeing this and a video by J-Dreamers called Petrified Titans, I've mentioned it many times in my videos, that was when I really first started putting the pieces of the puzzle together for this idea that, well, if there were once great trees, then there might have been great animals as well, and that led to my studies of Mont Go. So if you're new to my channel and you haven't seen the Unveiling a Titan series, it's a 6-part series that I did where I went in depth examining a mountain here on the Costa Blanca in Spain. And from the very get-go, I was well aware of things like pareidolia and apophenia and cherry picking and all of these different classic mistakes that people make when they're looking at things and they're drawing conclusions, and they think that just because something looks like something, it must absolutely be that thing that they think it is. And so I didn't want to approach it from that perspective. I've got a background in, I've got 2 college degrees, not that that means anything in today's world, but I have a bachelor's degree and a degree in chiropractic, about 10 years of university studies. So I didn't want to go out with a bunch of videos talking about ideas that most of the world would think are completely crazy, without doing a whole lot of work first. So anyway, this video by Jay Dreamer's Petrified Titans was the one that really started to link the trees together with titans and this whole idea of instant petrification and all of the different things that we're seeing, which I've taken to calling biogeology. I think it's a good umbrella term. Many people are familiar with the term mud fossils. I think that's great for a certain aspect of what we're seeing, but not all of it. And so definitely check this video out, and then we'll move along here. So I'm just going to start with a little primer with just some photos out of a folder I have called Trees, and just talk as I go. So this is I think called a bloodwood tree. It's also known as a dragon tree, and it bleeds red. And so the sap is bright red. It's just an example of how all the different ways in which sap can sorry, things are not going there. All the different ways in which sap, why is it, there we go, can petrify, and I'll show some examples of that in a moment. So to me, when I see this, I just definitely see tree stump. I see tree stump and root structures. There's a lot of different opinions about this. Some even think that they're melted buildings. I don't think that that's the case. More on sap. Wait a minute, am I even showing? Hold on one second. I'm a rookie at this stuff, so yes, I am showing my screen. Thank goodness. Okay. All right, and there we go. So when you see these giant mountains, the Everests and the Himalayas and the Alps, I think that what we're looking at are the remains of the great trees. We'll come back to this in a moment. And the plateaus, we've still got some pretty big trees, but these would have been practically moss by comparison to the giants. More examples of the red sap of that tree. Now this is an example of a slag heap here, and I have to admit that this particular picture looks a lot like a slag heap. I think this is from a guy named Mike Ferreira, this picture, and he doesn't buy the big tree theory at all. He thinks that these are just mining waste, and I can understand that, but the reason that I don't think that's the case is that a lot of these plateaus are showing grain, and that's something that I didn't mention with the Mr. B333 video, is that that one of the things that he didn't do is he didn't go in 3D and tilt and look around. And when you go into these different what look like tree stumps in Madagascar, you can actually zoom in with Google Earth if you tilt it in 3D mode, and you can see the basalt columns, and you can see how they're forming like grain. And mainstream geology tells us that those are from lava flow. That lava has come up out of the ground, it's cooled, and it looks that way. And I don't believe that anymore for a second. There's no examples that I've ever seen of lava cooling in that fashion. They're claiming something, but they don't They don't have a scientific experiment to show that it can happen. There's no video of it happening. So they're just saying things, and then they talk about hundreds of millions of years, and we weren't around to see it, so how can we contest their claims? So other theories are that these might be giant mushrooms, and even in the mainstream geological narrative, there's no doubt that giant mushrooms once existed, and they've got, I think, as many as 12 foot tall, possibly taller. If you look into mycelium and how mycelium grows, it's clearly massive, and it can cover huge areas. And what we call mushrooms are just the fruiting bodies of the mycelium. So that's an interesting thing. We'll see another picture here in a moment. But again, this is basalt columns. They want us to think that a volcano just shot that thing up and then it cooled with these, beautiful hexagonal columns. I don't think that that's the case for a second. I think that this is biological, and exactly what, with these particular things, I'm not certain whether it's tree or mushroom or something else. But I don't believe that they're tendons, which is one of the big theories out there, and I'll explain why. So just more examples. This is the myth of Paul Bunyan, and this ties in obviously to Titans and the idea of great ancient beings that once cut down the grand trees. And we've got a lot of old texts like the Bible and the Book of Enoch that talk about these things. And there's so many different types of trees. This is the image that I was talking about before. So this is a particular type of fungi. We'll look into it more, and you can see that it looks astonishingly like Devil's Tower. So some are led to believe that it was formerly a mushroom. More plateaus. Some say this is volcanic as well. You need to move away some of the earth and see what the stones look like underneath that to get a better idea. And that's the video we just saw. So let me just show a couple more things and we'll move on. So yeah, this obviously begs the question, if they're plateaus, if they were tree stumps, how could they just be cut like they were cut by a razor at the base like this? It's a good question. Can't answer it. This is a petrified tree stump. Also looks a great deal like Devil's Tower. And we're going to look at a little bit of footage from from people who've done some drone footage of Devil's Tower in a second. This is from the work of Hangman 1128, and I'm not certain about the trunks, these things. With 100% certainty, I think that they're definitely, some of them are trees, maybe not all of them. But when it comes to certainty, the work of Hangman 1128 is to me, is absolutely conclusive. It's self-evident. And this is an example of what we're going to be looking at a lot today. So this is how a tree breaks down, and these pieces can be a half an inch wide or smaller. They can be breaking down into dust. And you can see how they crack this way, and they break off this way, and they'll be flat on the edges, and it's just a theme that you're going to see over and over and over again. And in order to really understand, if we're talking about a tree that is 8 to 10 miles wide in diameter, we're talking about massive stuff, right? It's hard to get your head around it when you're as small as we are. But something like this here would be, so this just being a small piece of a branch of a bigger tree, this might be 50, 100 feet wide. That's how big we're talking about. And if you look at all this grain, all the different ways it goes and all the different colors, some is black, and we'll talk about the black as well. And so layering, if we go back to this and you see these different layers, if you look at them under a microscope, they're not just the same color, all of them. They'll be banded, and they'll do this sort of a thing. And so the trees, when they petrify, they go to certain trees, I can't speak for all of them, but definitely the cedars will petrify into harder stone, and then some of the bands will be sandstone. And then that sandstone will break down into sand. And the sandstone can be incredibly detailed with micro layering, or it can lose its layering entirely as it's on the verge of going down to being sand. And this is sandstone here. We're going to look more at this in a moment. And this is what's known as aggregate. Some would look at this and think this was formerly a building, that this is an example of geopolymer. And Hangman has shown very conclusively, in my opinion, that that's not correct. And the reason it's not correct is that this is coming, and it's coming from one side. So you have to think of, if the trees were real, we know that the floods were real. You know, the biblical flood, all of the world's religions, all of the world's mythologies have these great cataclysms that occurred. And you can look to the works of people like Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson and the stuff that they've done when it comes to dry falls in Montana, and just all the different ways in which the world has been scarred by these events. And this is an example of that scarring, because what happens is, as the floods come, you know, these massive tsunamis that reached the tops of the mountains and flowed at great rate, they're actually whacking and embedding the remains of the tree. But you'll only find this on one side. On the other side, you won't find it. So this gives you an indication of what direction the flow was going as well. So here, you know, we're taught that this is all sedimentary layering. This is how it's all been created. It comes down and just lays down bit by bit by bit, and you know, it's dead life forms. Whether it's on land, the trees are falling and dying, and then more trees grow and fall on top of those, or whether it's underwater, where you have all the creatures dying and going to the bottom of the seafloor and then being compressed by water. That's what's creating our sedimentary layering, and then as that pressure increases in the mainstream model, that leads to metamorphic rock, which means that these layers are starting, because of that pressure and the heat, are starting to literally kind of melt and mold together. And that, I think, is a fantasy narrative, and you'll see more about why. This is just an example, one of those little chunks that I was talking about before. We're going to get into this as well. Here is clearly wood grain, and everywhere that you see quartz veins, this is the sap of the great trees. And it is absolutely incredible, all the different ways in which the sap can manifest. When you see these absolutely beautiful pictures, these are screenshots taken straight from Hangman 1128's channel. His work is incredible. I've watched many hours of it, and sometimes I break down in tears, because to me how do I say this? It's so rare that you find actual evidence that is just undeniable, where it's self-evident. You know, you don't have to believe, you can just know. Like, if a group of people are standing around and there's an elephant over there, someone can point and go, "Look, there's an elephant." And nobody's going to go, "You're a crazy person." They're just going to recognize, yeah, it's an elephant. Well, we've all been blinded to very obvious truths that can be seen around our realm. And I call that paradigm blindness, and we're all suffering from it, because we've been lied to about so many different things.